No, it's not a lot of stress, but it's like. Oh,
Sir, can you grab my boat there?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Good.
Or street that don't continue. And I know you get lost in eliminates.
Awesome, awesome, welcome everyone to our January 31st meeting of the North Main Street Task Force. I am Councilwoman Sue Anderbaugh, Ward 3, and Chair of this task force. Excited to be with you today. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Chair Sue Anderbaugh.
I'm here.
Vice Chair David Higgins. Lieutenant William Brown is absent. Marissa Lopez.
Here.
Mitchell Peterson.
I'm here.
Peter Cameron.
Here.
Thomas Badway.
Here.
Sarah Engel.
Here.
Jessica Lance.
Here.
Nate Ursula.
Here.
Sean Raymond.
Here.
Rosie Jaswell.
Here.
We have 11 present and 1 absent. We have a quorum.
Awesome, thank you so much. I also want to thank the solicitor's office for being here. Rep. Kislak for joining us as well. And Lieutenant Brown is on the Zoom, which doesn't count for quorum, but he is here today. That's great. So here. We have 2 really great agenda items today, so I don't want to take up a ton of time in welcoming everyone. And so I really want to thank Bob Azar, the Deputy Director of the Department of Planning, for being with us. And our second presentation or discussion will be from Rosie Jaswell, who's a member of our task force. But the first, just following up on last time, there were really kind of like 2 tracks of thought. One was this like long-term planning, how do we prepare now for the long-term vision we have for North Main Street, and also what can we be doing in the near term to improve the safety on North Main Street. So I wanted to make sure we were reflecting both of those in the agenda today. And so Bob is going to walk us through some issues around zoning on North Main, how we can encourage neighborhood growth and development. And I'm really excited to be here. Bob is so fantastic. And can you swear him in, but he's a city employee or something? Okay. I know some committees are really like swearing. Yeah. So I don't know. Okay, cool. Bob, take it away. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm Bob Azar, I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning Department. This sort of specializes in zoning and land use. And I'm going to talk through the zoning of North Main Street, how we got to where we are, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Some of the things that we've been thinking about as we work our way through the comprehensive plan. And part of me as I work through some technical difficulties. So far, nothing is working as I had hoped. We do have this this interactive map that's supposed to be showing you zoning, and it's not. And in fact, if I go back to Zoom, I think I want to share my screen so that people can see what is actually happening here. You can see this. For some reason, this thing is not working properly, but there's always a workaround. And in this case, I have the full zoning map here, and I can kind of dig in a little bit to show you the things along with these. So North Main Street, very long street in the city. There's the part that's one way, sort of down in one of the College Hill area, and then I get the impression that you're more interested in talking about the 2-way stretch of North Main Street.
Equally important. Yeah.
So actually, I can just sort of take you through the zoning for the length of North Main Street, and you can see so you can see sort of the variety of different zoning districts that we have there. North Main Street starts at, essentially here, I think College Street is the beginning of North Main Street. And on either side, of the one-way street heading northbound, we have some institutional zoning, representing the, more like the Ridley campus. We have some downtown mixed use zoning. And then we have a little pocket of commercial zoning, this is the area with the restaurants. I don't want to, I'm not sure what the names of the restaurants, the Mill Taverns, that's still.
Yeah, there's like the XO bar, the
Yeah.
Mill Tavern,
Right.
the Extra Pop.
Yeah, right in that area. And then we actually get into a little area of called residential professional zoning. Just going back here, the institutional zoning. That's for institutional growth. That's the zone that allows for the colleges and the I2 zone allows for the colleges to grow and expand within that boundary. The C2 is a zone that we have a lot of in Providence, and we'll see it further north on North Main Street. It's the predominant commercial zoning district that we have. It's a mixed use district that allows for a variety of commercial and residential uses. Allows for 4 stories in height, and then there are processes where, depending on the scale of the project, some additional height could be allowed. The residential professional zone, yeah, it's a bit of an outlier here on North Main Street. We typically don't see it on our major commercial corridors. It's an area that allows for residential and mainly professional offices, doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, and so forth. It's usually overlaid in an area that has large houses that may not be perfectly conducive to residential uses. So decades ago, we started to allow for professional offices. You see a lot of that in sort of the Angel Waterman corridor, these big mansions that have doctors' offices. Interestingly, a lot of those are going back to residential uses, maybe not single family mansions, but multifamily, because that's the nature of the economy these days. Everybody's looking at opportunities for housing. And the professional offices seem to be, in some cases, consolidating bigger commercial. As we move up along North Main Street, we have a couple of areas of R4, which is our multifamily zone. That would correspond with the Shasta Square apartments. I think that's what they call it.
Charles Gate?
No, Charles Gate's actually a little
Oh.
further than that. Shasta Square had been rented by Rizzi for a number of years. I think it's back into sort of project, rentals. And then there's another sort of low slung apartment building on the east side of North Main. This is that stretch where you're heading up the hill. And where before it kind of converges with Benefit Street. And we've got a little bit of 3-family zoning. So it is actually a real mix in this southern portion. As we head further north, we get into C3. C3 is a commercial, it's the heaviest of our commercial districts. It allows for things like big commercial plazas. This corresponds with the Whole Foods shopping plaza, Charles Gate across the street. So again, a mixed use, more relaxed on the dimensional standards in terms of setback and so forth. C2, the C2 zone, not only has permissions for a mix of uses, but it also has somewhat strict design standards. We're concerned about where the buildings sit on the lot. We want them at the front of the lot. We tend not to want to see buildings set back with parking lots in front. You can do that in C3, but not in C2. So once you get to the top of the hill, once you get past Doyle Avenue, it's pretty much C2 the rest of the way to Pawtucket. with obviously the North Burial Ground being an outlier on the west side for a big stretch of North Main Street, that's an open space zone, where you're not gonna see, with buildings associated with the cemetery, with no commerce, no residential, in that area. So, and C2, as you can see, is, once you get past the cemetery, C2 is on both sides of the street. Going up North Main Street, usually one lot, sometimes a little deeper than one lot, or some lots that are very deep, and they kind of move up the hill. And you can also see that it goes down into to the west. This corresponds with that plaza that has partially it's on the job lot and a couple medical office building. So just to talk a little bit more about C2. C2 is a zone that allows up to 50 feet of height for 4 stories. Again, it allows for a mix of commercial, lots of different commercial uses and residential uses. Buildings are supposed to be built pretty much right to the street or with a very shallow setback. What we think of as an urban context. With respect to the ability to go taller than 50 feet, if a project is big enough to qualify as a land development project, that would be a residential project with 10 or more dwelling units, or a commercial project with 10,000 or more square feet of floor area. 10,000 square feet, roughly the size of a modern drugstore. 10,000 square feet that on one floor, but you could obviously build multiple stories that would still amount to 10,000 square feet. Anything bigger than those thresholds goes to the city plan commission, and through that process, there's the ability to ask for additional height. If we provide certain things like mixed use, affordable housing, open space on the site that's available to the public, you can get up to 2 extra stories. So that's in C2. With respect to uses, it is permissive, as I've said, but there are some things that are more strictly regulated. You have to get a special use permit, which means you have to go to the zoning board if you want a principal use parking lot. So if the only thing you're using your land for is a parking lot, you need a special use permit. You need a special use permit for a drive-through, for a gas station, and for a vehicle dealer repair and service facility. Okay, so that requires a public hearing, requires notification to the abutters. There are some uses that are prohibited in C2, outdoor storage, warehouse, any kind of live entertainment except for what we call incidental entertainment. Incidental entertainment is background music, played softly. If it's live, it can't be amplified. The city is strict when it comes to these types of facilities in C2. There's been some discussion about whether we should loosen that, whether it might be appropriate to do so, but to date that hasn't happened. The concern around live entertainment, certainly nightclubs, which would be a sort of a heavier use, those are not allowed in C2. The concern we often hear about these types of uses is that because they're so close to residential uses, you'll have commercial uses right up against houses in this area. The concern is that the noise and spillover effects can cause incompatibility. So live entertainment not allowed. Car washes not allowed. Now I know some of you are saying, well, we have some of these things. We do have nightclubs, we do have live entertainment, we do have car washes, we do have storage, outdoor storage, and so forth. Oh, by the way, self-storage is not allowed anywhere these days. The thing about zoning is that if something is established legally, either because it was allowed at a time when zoning allowed it, or the zoning board granted a variance to allow some permission to do something, that can continue. So we have a lot of these uses, sometimes refer to them as grandfather, legal non-conforming, or by variance. These days, the zoning board is much less likely to allow a use by variance. It's almost unheard of these days. The preferred method to get a use that you're looking for, as long as it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and the council is amenable to doing it, that would mean a change in the zoning map to allow that. And the comprehensive plan forms the basis of zoning and the basis of the zoning map. Under the comprehensive plan, some zoning changes are easier than others. North Main Street, this whole area of C2 actually used to be zone C4. That's a archaic zoning district. It's mainly its regulations were mainly supplanted by today's C3 zone. But in 2014, the last time we did a conference in zoning ordinance, this area that was C4 was changed to C2. Okay, so that did change the nature of what's allowed going forward, even if it didn't change some of these uses that were established legally prior to that rezoning. You'll notice that there is some C3, not just for Charles Gate or the big shopping plaza, but there also along Branch Avenue, Mickey's Liquors, some auto related uses, the driving mill, that's all in this C3 zone. So kind of a mix of zones. That's what we call the base zone. Then we also have a separate map that is called the overlay map. And in the northern portion of North Main Street, basically to the north of the North Burial Ground here, one of those streets. We have what's called the TOD overlay. That's transit. That means transit development. Under the last zoning ordinance adopted in 2014, we created this as a bit of a pilot. We put this overlay zone here, and they'll put it on a portion of Broad Street, close to downtown, what we might call Upper Broad Street. And the TOD zone basically says, in many cases, what you can do in the underlying zone still exists. So what you can do in the T2 still exists, but there are a few exceptions. The purpose of a transit-oriented development zone, and this is sort of a national standard, it's supposed to kind of dovetail your land use policy with your transportation policy. TOD zones are intended to allow for higher density, to promote mixed use and walking, to coincide with frequent transit service. We did this when the R line was being developed. The R line comes right up North Main Street, so the hope was, let's alter our land use policy and maybe we'll get some high density housing that will work well with transit. A few things about TOD zones. Generally, it de-emphasizes auto related uses, so no drive-throughs, no car washes, no storage yards, no gas stations, no principally used parking lots, no vehicle, dealers or repair shops. So some of the things that are allowed in C2 by right or by special use permit are not allowed in TOD. On the flip side, you can get more height, you can go up to 70 feet by right, and there's the ability to go even taller through the land development project process. We also have, this is the only place in the city where we have maximum parking. So you can't have as many parking spaces as you want. And in some cases, you can relief from all parking requirements entirely. So here's what I'll say about the zoning on North Main and how well it you know, what kind of development we see. I'll say that in many C2 areas of the city, we've seen a considerable amount of development. A lot of apartment buildings, a lot of mixed use buildings, in some cases, buildings taller than 4 stories, dense housing and mixed use. We see that a lot in Federal Hill. We see it in the West End. We see it on the east side, down Wayland, Bay area, and Wickenden Street. We're not seeing that on the Main Street. We've seen a little bit of you know, mixed use urban development. There's a small mixed use building that was built at 9th Street. That has ground floor commercial and some residences above. But for the most part, the market has not been, you know, I can't claim to speak for property owners or developers. What I know is what I hear from people when they come in and they talk to me about what they want to do. And for the most part, we're not seeing developers who have expressed an interest in building residential on North Main or even, you know, some kind of mixed use.
Because of the homelessness is high up there.
We're not. Oh my God.
Please.
We're not. Continue.
Yeah, so, you know, I know that there are, you know, there are a lot of these uses that were permitted, that have been, that are, you know, sort of, you know, more auto oriented. There's a lot of service, and repair, and, you know, auto parts stores and things like that. You know, there's some gas stations. There's a lot of parking that happens on North Main. You know, the Miriam Hospital is a very large parking lot where the arena used to be. So, you know, that's the way it is. Zoning, you know, zoning doesn't make things happen. Zoning allows things to happen. Zoning, you know, in some cases restricts. The comprehensive plan sets the broad policy for what we want to see, and the zoning ordinance establishes those fine regulations. And, you know, the city's policy is we want to see mixed use on this corridor, or we want to see housing on this corridor. We'll give you even, you know, density bonuses to build that kind of stuff on this corridor. And the market is not responding today to that.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate this. A quick note, so one of the reasons we invited Bob, besides that he's so brilliant and knows all about zoning, is we are in the process as a city of updating the comprehensive plan right now. It only happens every 10 years, and that has sets the tone and the spirit for any future zoning changes. So this is a good time to be thinking about the zoning and what types of development we might want to see on North Main Street. And I have a bunch of questions, but before I have any questions, I want to see if any members of the task force have questions. Amherst?
I have a quick question. Can we access that map?
Yeah, if you just do a Google search for Providence zoning map, you'll see there's a main page. And when you go to, it's providenceri.gov/planning/zoning. This links you to the text of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Book, and then, this gives you these maps that I was just showing, there's two of them. There's the base zoning, and then there's the overlay. You need to, it's a little complicated, zoning's a little complicated, but, you know, in general, you need to look at the map in the context of the book, which tells you, right in the middle, or as well, tells you in this table, everything that's allowed and not allowed in each of these different colors, representing the different zones. So that's a good place to start.
Thank you.
I can email that around too, if that's.
There's also an interactive version of this that is not working.
Not even have to work today.
This is what we like to use because the zoning map would appear on this and you can zoom around and yeah, it's. Anyway.
Sarah, yeah.
Just because I missed it, what year was the rezoning from what had been C4 down to C2?
2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was the same time that the
The
two.
TRD was established in that. We in 2014, couple of years prior, we launched it into a complete zoning overhaul. So this document and these maps replaced what had been in place for over 20 years prior. And by the way, the ordinance does get amended. It's not like we adopted it in 2014 and we stopped there. The first couple of pages show you all the different amendments that have been passed. There's been dozens of them. Mostly small tweaks to the zoning map. Occasionally more significant map changes, and occasionally some changes to the map.
So it's been effective about 10 years, correct?
That's right.
Correct. So why do you think it hasn't taken?
Why do I think? Well, you know, again, I may not be the best person to answer the question, but I think that there are landowners on this corridor who are happy with what's there and don't see any reason to change. Or don't feel or don't have any interest in developing mixed use on this corridor. I wonder, and again, it's not my job to speculate on land and you know, try to find something that works in the market. But I wonder if some of the existing landowners were to investigate whether a mixed use development in pencil on this corridor. I wonder if it would. I don't know. I've not heard whether it has.
We're not at public comment, we're not there yet.
So.
We're not at, Christian, we're not at.
Oh, I thought it was a question.
No, it's task force has questions. Oh, sorry, that's not in process.
I have a question. So you talk a little bit about for the sites that are grandfathered in that would not be compliant with you know, current zoning. What events would result in that grandfathered status ending? Is it like when the business changes hands, when one business closes and the new one opens?
No, so if first of all, if something was granted by the zoning board of review, if it's a use variance, that runs with the land forever.
Oh, that's
Cannot
going
be,
forever.
can't be changed unless the owner decides to there's actually some legal questions about whether it could even be relinquished by the owner. We do have some provisions where a use by variance can be changed to something else. The owner would have to take that initiative and the other thing would have to be allowed by zoning. Something that's grandfathered, in other words, something that was allowed at one time that the zoning ordinance has changed so that it's not allowed anymore. If the owner could voluntarily change it to something that's allowed. The owner could also go to the zoning board to change it to something that's not allowed, so long as the zoning board finds that the new use is less intensive than the original one. Or, if there's, if it's clear that the grandfathered use has been abandoned, then it goes away. And abandonment usually means out of service for over a year, and with some other evidence that there was no intention to reestablish that use. These things don't often go away.
So how big a,
Oh, no, please.
how big a factor do you think that is in terms of, you know, the kind of development we want to promote not happening, that there are just so many sites that are kind of not really, like the new zoning rules aren't really applying because they're still under the old status? Is that like most of the lots on the street? Is it 80%?
I have not studied that, but I would say that North Main Street, you know, has a pretty high percentage of properties that are non-compliant in one way or another, either by use or by dimensional standards, say a building set far back with parking, you know, something along those lines.
Bob, to this question, is there a way to, like, is there a map of like the ones, or just in the ordinance maybe of the, which ones have that use variance as opposed to?
No,
Okay.
no. We have experimented with mapping the variances in the city. You know, to be honest, the city had gotten to a point where the zoning board was sort of the de facto land use policymaker, one property at a time. There are thousands of variances throughout the city, and you know, in some cases, you know, those variances are for innocuous things, you know, like minor side yard setback. You think someone wants to put a small addition on a house and they're constrained in how they can do it. But some use variances, like the ability to put an auto salvage in residential zone, for example, those are a problem. But we can't make them go away as long as they were legally established, and as long as they are legally following the rules. It can't go away. Very importantly, uses established by variance and non-conforming uses are not allowed to expand. They're allowed to maintain as they are, but they're not allowed to expand.
So there's nothing stopping that landowner if there was a incentive or reason to, if the street wasn't the way that it is. And they wanted to, you know, conform to the C2 zoning in a development. There's nothing stopping them from doing that.
That's correct.
There's variance.
That's correct.
It's just,
Yeah.
they don't have.
That's correct.
I was also wondering if there's any thought to either reducing or modifying the C3 area. And the fact that it allows a lot of setbacks and things makes it pretty challenging there to make a walkable area.
It's, you know, right now, as we're in the process of developing the comprehensive plan, these are exactly the kinds of things that are on the table. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we're gonna be having, you know, over the next several months, we're gonna be having debates about not so much the zoning, but about the you know, the future land use map that leads to the zoning. And you know, we're not, at this moment, we're not proposing changing this C3 zone, but you know, it would not be out of the question to have that conversation.
Or if there was a certain overlay for the portion that is maybe like closest to North Main or something like that, would that be?
Of the C3. Yeah, I mean, it could be shrunk, it could be eliminated, there are, you know, any number of options. You know, as long as as long as, as long as the foundation for these zoning changes is in the comprehensive plan, then it can be done. And, you know, this is a process of, you know, public hearings and community engagement and review by the city plan commission and review by the council. So, you know, there's a long way to get there and, you know, you can be assured that there will be you know, if that's something that was desirable, well, you know, by some people, there will be a robust debate about it.
So
Yeah.
I own a predominant large percentage of that C3 zone,
Yes,
and I just want to on record that I want to be on notice if there's going to be any change or I want to voice my opinion and be heard. Because all my businesses are in that C3 zone.
Thanks, Mom.
yes.
Any other task force members with questions or comments they didn't bring up? I have one final one. Oh, yeah.
Can we ask questions of each other? Or is this mainly just for?
It's mainly for Bob at this
Okay.
point, and then we'll open it up to discussion. I just want to make sure that we don't make Bob stay for forever. So to the extent you have questions for Bob, he also, I'd like him to be able to go home at some point. So, but we can have discussion in a second. One final question I have for you, Bob, not to put you on the spot. Do you know when there'll be drafts of the comprehensive plan that are released for discussion?
Soon, we are, don't hold me to
Yeah.
exact dates. But our plan right now is we have been for several months now briefing the city plan commission on where things are, and our next briefing is scheduled for the meeting, I think it's on February 20th. And the goal there is, yeah, February 20th. The goal on the 20th is to discuss with them what we're calling our growth strategy, which is a map of the city, much broader than the zoning map, that talks about areas of the city where we intend for the zoning to stay more or less the same, and other areas of the city where we think there should be some zoning changes, mainly to allow for more housing and you know, more intensive development. That will then lead into the land use element, which contains the future land use map. Land use element and the future land use map lead directly to the zoning ordinance. There are all sorts of other components of the comprehensive plan about transportation and housing and economic development and so forth. Those all will inform zoning, but the land use element is the most important. We'll probably be talking about the land use element to a certain degree in February, definitely in March. It's possible by March we're going to have some, if not all, of the comprehensive plan in a very rough first draft.
And a thing I should know the answer to, but don't, so self-call. One of these changes that we're talking about would go before the zoning committee versus the CPC.
Okay, so it's a good question, and it's something that people often get confused about. The comprehensive plan, you know, the big policy document, that gets reviewed first by the city plan commission and then forwarded to the city council. The city council holds public hearings on the comprehensive plan and is the body that is charged with adopting the comprehensive plan. Same thing with the zoning ordinance. Anything related to this map, anything relating to the book goes through the same process. City plan commission and city council. The zoning changes that are called for in the comprehensive plan have to come after the comprehensive plan is adopted. We could make some zoning changes to this document or to this map today, but they have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan that's in effect today. If there are big sweeping changes we're calling for in this new comprehensive plan, we're gonna have to wait until that's adopted before we make those zoning changes, okay? The zoning board, there's no zoning, committee.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a.
The zoning board of review, is a body that considers, really two things. Variances from the literal requirements of this document, you can demonstrate, that this document imposes a hardship on you. There's a lot of legal standards. You can ask the zoning board to grant you relief from specific regulations of this. Like I said before, they're not gonna do that in almost every case where you're asking to do something, a use that's not allowed. Most of the variances they grant these days are gonna be dimensional.
Okay.
You got a little bit of setback, maybe some parking, maybe some landscaping, maybe some height, things like that, dimensional regulations. The zoning board also grants special use permits, but those all have to be set forth in this document. If you want to do a principal use parking lot in the C2 zone, the zoning ordinance says you have to ask the zoning board to grant that. The zoning board has to do it. The council, the city planning commission and the council are responsible for establishing the big picture policy in the comprehensive plan and establishing the nitty-gritty regulations of the zoning ordinance. The zoning board, again, used to be the de facto land use policymaker in the city. That's not the case anymore. The zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, we take those seriously and we expect people to follow those rules. I think the zoning board was able to do that for so long because the zoning ordinance had gotten to the point where it was sort of stale and it didn't really reflect existing conditions or the market conditions in the city. If we feel that this ordinance doesn't reflect, existing conditions, market conditions, or in some cases, things that we want to see despite market conditions, then we make amendments to this to ensure that it's calibrated to try to get us what we want.
Awesome. I want to make sure that we take advantage of Bob being here and also not keep him until midnight. Not just listening to the midnight, don't worry, but if task force numbers are okay with that, I'd like to see if there are any questions from the public out of public order comment, just because if they have questions for Bob, I don't want to stay for forever. And I usually start any meeting I chair like this, and I didn't do it this time, but we're all here in good faith and treat each other with respect and kindness. And I know that goes without saying, but sometimes it doesn't go without saying. So I'm just going to say that out loud. And that's the spirit I'd like to hear any public comment and a conversation with each other. And we're all here for the betterment of North Main. And so, Christian, I know you had a question. Yeah. And folks could say your name for the public record.
Okay. Christian Roseland, I'm the Ward 3 coordinator for Providence Fitness Network. So we talked before about.
Yeah.
When the city talks about why you're having difficulty attracting people to build housing on North Main, has there been any consideration of how hostile that street is to pedestrian activity in terms of the reasons why you're having difficulty getting developers to build housing there?
Absolutely. Yeah. North Main, I'm sure this is something that we talked about in this committee. North Main Street has a width and a geometry that's conducive to relatively high speed travel by vehicles, a lot of throughput, 4 lanes of traffic make crossing North Main Street as a pedestrian a challenge at the very least, with that and the fact that crosswalks are often far away from each other. Another feature, little pet peeve of mine, often the RIDOT standard for a crosswalk on a street like this is the 3 legs of the 4-leg intersection get the crosswalk and there isn't if your desired line is straight across the street where there isn't a crosswalk, RIDOT expects you to do 3 crossings. I think that's unreasonable. I think the reason for that is to reduce vehicular congestion, but it makes the street hostile.
Seems like the short answer is yes. And that's the other, thing we'll be discussing as part of the task force. And you could say your name.
Yes, I'm Kathleen Deanna. I'm the board chair for the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition and also currently the vice chair for the Region Fleet Streets Advisory Committee. Did I hear you correctly to say that 80% of this North Main Street corridor is legal non-conforming uses?
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
Oh, what did you say?
A significant percent.
Yeah.
I don't have numbers.
Okay, so, but, given that it's a significant number, even with sweeping changes of the zoning map, which of course would be difficult, it is possible that very little, little would be able to change, correct?
Change in the built environment happens when the private sector develops property. So it's gonna happen one parcel at a time. There are some areas, I'll say this about C2 zone. It's a very popular zone. People, often property owners come to us asking to change the zone to C2 because they like what it allows. Dense multi-family housing, mixed use, for example, the ability to get additional height. It's extremely popular in the Thayer Street area.
Right.
It's popular on Lincoln Street, it's popular on Atwells Avenue and Westminster Street. That kind of development, is available on North Main Street, but again, we haven't seen it. So, if there's a market and there's a desire and if there are incentives for that sort of development to happen, you can see change happen in a short amount of time. Look at Brook Street. Yeah, that's not the case.
Yeah, but given, I mean, so that means if current property owners that have these legal non-conforming uses don't want to or don't feel it's profitable to change their use, then they don't have to. And no amount of base zoning change or overlay zoning changes can force them to. And so, I mean, you were talking last meeting about the intransigence of this change in this quarter. It's been many, many years of many reports, and nothing, very little has changed. And I'm just thinking about the interaction of the legal non-conforming uses as being part of the resistance.
Yeah.
I mean,
There are also a number of, and then I see a question, there are a number of the vacant properties that are in the C2 as well. So there are some just properties that are ready and there and empty and have been for some time, and that's another source of inspiration, at least for me. We have a question for Bob.
So my name is Mike English. My brother was actually killed there on New Year's Eve. And couple of things that I have a question on. I don't see anybody from the state, if I'm not mistaken here. And that's right, because that on this too, because it's a main state highway, am I correct? And are you communicating with them as far as doing your zoning is, part of the role?
We communicate with RIDOT on a regular basis, not necessarily about zoning.
But wouldn't that be held like yin and yang, because that's their road is in front of everybody's household or everybody's business. And then on top of it, you got a major problem that a lot of businesses, and you can ask some of the people that are here today that own businesses there that have homeless issues. Who wants to buy? I mean, if you're currently there, it's one thing. Who wants to buy property to know that you got to fight a homeless system that no one lets you fight? And how can you improve anything in that community with having tents that are still occupied by the homeless and given more rights than the people that are paying taxes and the businesses that are creating the revenue in that city? And I'm not trying to bust jobs, but I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what you could actually change and improve on zoning when the fundamental problem is it's a homeless problem in Rhode Island. And North Main Street is one of the biggest problems that all these businesses have in their zoning and they're choosing of what they get to do or don't do. but maybe it's me.
And I would say, oh, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about some very complex issues that.
So you know, and as far as the business,
I
And I
am,
think like one of the things we're talking about here, Sharon, thank you for being here, is, and I'm sorry for your loss. Is some of the uses that could be here would be housing, like the ultimate solution to a lot of people facing homelessness is housing. I mean, people need places to live, and we have a real strong poverty issue and a housing issue.
but what investment would do that? And I'm not trying to
Yeah, that's-
bust my chops either.
Yeah,
What business would invest in that if out in front has the homeless that they gotta conquer, can't rent? Thinking that these people are gonna stay there when they start.
because we have, the part of the goal here, and we can have this conversation offline too, is if we have enough housing, if we have enough places for people to live, that'll help the.
But you're bringing out, and I get that, and I'll stop with this, you're bringing outside people to come and invest in Rhode because I believe there's only two of us, and then one in Brady, that I know in this group, maybe three. But at the same time, most of these people are coming from outside the state, and you're asking them to invest all their money into a project while they're looking at the street saying, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
And that's all I'm viewing as a person, as a businessman, as a citizen, and as an advocate. I can't see how you can address that first before you address it.
Yeah, the homeless crisis is real and something I think many of us are committed to addressing through housing and other services. Thank you. Any other further questions for Bob? Okay, thank you, Bob. You are so great. Thank you for being here. Would love, I think, Rachel, you had some questions or discussion, and welcome any other discussion from members of the staff.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll put you on the spot if you don't anymore.
No, no,
Let's see where we came back
It's
to.
kind of a similar thing that we've been on for a little bit, so, Tom, you go by Tom. So, because earlier you asked a question, you asked why, this mixed use, development hasn't taken off, and you're asking that of Ms. Fraser. And I guess I was wondering to hear from you, and probably also from Peter about, because, well, he answered saying, that maybe landowners have been good with the current things and talking a little bit about market dynamics. So I was interested to hear from those of you here, as business owners, what you think might be some of the reasoning for that.
Sure, questions.
Both,
So,
I guess it's
and this
that
is
I'm
how,
looking at, yeah.
so just so everybody knows that, my family's had a business on North Main Street since 1973. I've been on North Main Street since 1973. I'm there every day. North Main Street is a state highway. If you look at it, it goes from Maine to Key West. That's what it does. You Google it, that's what it does. If you look at it in every other state, it's a commercial road. It's not a residential road. It just doesn't fit the criteria of what's currently established, as things that are not going. They're just not going. You used to go down North Main Street, you gotta stop with LA Fitness, Pep Boys, and Raymond's Church. Walgreens, these are things, they're just not moving. They're there. The Armory, it's not a residential street.
But for that, I think to Rachel's question, the type of businesses, I think some people are talking about mixed use buildings, is that like you just haven't seen like the economic potential for some of that, at least in the parts and community you're on? No pressure.
I don't see it. I see it as predominantly an automotive related street, because there's a lot of more businesses down there. There were a lot more previously. Like if you knew North Main Street previously in the past, North Main Street had Porsche, Audi, BMW, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep on North Main Street. The city pushed them out, they were all lower. And the city lost all that tax revenue.
I'm curious about that. When you say push them out, like by what mechanism? Because the thing I just learned was how hard it is to do.
Excise tax. The city of Providence would charge these car dealerships taxes on cars that are sitting,
Okay, so the cars that are on the lot.
cars that are in the lot, so think about it, the only place you can go buy BMW now is Warwick or Newport. Before that was on North Main Street.
In terms of other kinds of his businesses, though, like the Benny's building, which I think you said.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, to me, that seems like a building that, like, if
I just-
there were, okay, yeah, no, I'm not thinking of the spot. Yeah. But I guess like my thought, that's been empty for a while, right, and that's set up for a different, not other sales necessarily, for other services.
Sure.
It seems like, is there demand still for businesses like that looking for a building like that? Because it seems, I'd be surprised if there are people who want that and that building is sitting vacant for years, you know?
Right, so. I'm having a meeting with. The planning commission next week, so I'm gonna talk to them about just different uses over there. But I have my own use, right now, I still have my intention to put automotive related type of business. That's grandfathered in at that time.
I think-
Right now, but that could change.
So I think the challenge with North Main Street and that it was built as kind of a state highway and that there was a lot of car, uses built around it, is that this context, those streets are usually away from the dense urban core, the dense residential areas. North Main Street is a 1 block away from really dense urban areas. The whole other side of North Main Street, tons and tons and tons and tons of people live there. Tons of people would want to be able to walk there and walk along there and walk to businesses and meet their needs. Whereas some of the typical, setup of North Main Street and the types of businesses that are there today is more appropriate away from where people live. Is that fair?
It's, everybody has a difference of opinion, but
I think that is a lot of those businesses are serving people who don't live within a couple of blocks of there.
Right, they're all
Like, the
driving.
people who live on the other side of town, that's where they come to get their car serviced or something. And I'll say that for somebody who lives, basically one business, one house, and then my house in from North Main, it's on the third lot. And there's not a lot that draws me down to that street as like businesses that I frequent. It's not a street where I would like walk to a restaurant or to a store to buy groceries or.
and I agree, there's more restaurants.
But it's close enough, it's close enough that you could, it's close enough that you could walk to them if they were there.
Sort of neighborhood strip for walking.
We would love to walk to North Main Street for all of these services.
It
but
looks
they're
like
not
that's
there.
part of why we convened the task force as part of like the study that Mirva did, or Councilwoman LaFortune, was like, I know probably the third most common thing I hear from, and I can make this list of what the most common things are, but then I hear from residents is like this passion for North Main Street and what it could be. And like, would love to walk to even the things that are there now, like Providence Bagel or the pharmacy and stuff, it just feel like really unsafe because of the safety concerns. So traffic related safety.
So walking to Mickey's is, we were talking about that.
Oh, yeah, I've tried to walk to
Walking
Mickey's,
Mickey's
that's
is tough.
not great.
Another street crossing kind of thing, depending on.
Yeah, you're talking about it. Marissa.
So what other incentives have been given to business owners? Because I feel like trying to overtax people to take their property.
Yeah, what's the
It's a little
carrot?
sensitive
That's a good
topic
question.
with me, and I grew up
Yeah.
on the east side, born and raised. And I go down to North Main Street for many things, the hair store, I go down there to get my car worked on over near the car wash. Like I shop down there a lot. So what other incentives have been given to property owners? Because I know one thing that's an issue for me is taxes. And I have a lot that I want to build on. I want to build apartments. And the issue is the tax.
Yeah.
And I want to make it so it's a little affordable for people to live there, but between taxes and the cost of building, but taxes mainly. I'm like, I don't know if I can make something that could help out the community and make it a little better place, but taxes are,
Actually, real, yeah.
I think that could be a deterrent too, like, I don't wanna build anything over here, and I gotta pay these taxes, and I
Yeah,
gotta deal with tenants. And, tenants here in Rhode Island, they have a lot of rights, sometimes more than, we just bought a building in Pawtucket. We had to pay to get somebody out that wasn't renting from us, they just happened to go into the building and decide to take up residency, and to get rid of them, we had to pay them to get out. So that could be something but I think if you look at the taxes, look at a way to give an incentive in that manner, maybe they would.
yeah.
You're talking about like the commercial property tax, basically, or
Or what other? economic
Commercial,
incentives
if it's,
Can I help you on this one?
Yes.
So for a lady like that owns her own house in the city of Providence, am I correct still?
yes,
All right, and she's gonna buy a house next door. She now has homestead of her house that she might rent above her, but she doesn't have it her next door. She should, because she's a homeowner in the city of Providence, in a small business, not a humongous person. She should have the homestead deduction
for that building or any other building within the city of Providence, because she is a resident in the city, she has part of the argument of she'll take care of her house versus I live in Texas
Mhm.
and I get that same
Yeah.
charge.
Yeah, no, thank you. And there was a tax and revenue commission, according to our, senior director of policy, I forget your director title, like something really nice, of policy council, who staffed that, and I was on that commission as well, that looked into some of these issues of who gets homestead and how that affects renters. And I know we're still working on the implementation of that, but I wonder for a future meeting and with the vice chair, we could maybe have someone from the economic development office, either with the city or the state, come talk about like what incentives either are available or could be available, because there are things for developments of North Main Street and how we incentivize like Main Streets. I just get the north stuff in my head. There's like grant programs that exist in the state and elsewhere for development of like main streets and like this type of development. So I wonder if we could have like Liz Tanner, the Commerce Secretary, or someone from the, I know our economic development director is leaving, so brainstorm who else we could invite, but that sounds like a really good topic, because it's not just like the stick, like stop doing this, but like how do we get you to do the right things? Or not the right things, how do we get you to do the development that we go to see?
Or incentive, something that would make a difference for you, if, you know, as you're thinking about your property.
It could, that's why I'm starting some sort of discussions.
Yeah, okay, that's a good,
Well, on the commercial tax, question, like how, I have no idea, how do we compare to say like Princeton?
we have the highest commercial tax rate in the state.
By how much, like,
Aaron, do you know off the top of your head
How
how high our what tax rate is compared to?
Yeah.
Ours is like 35, 34, the next closest is probably like 26, 27, for every $1,000, so we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any point for public comment.
There will be a point. for that.
Yeah, but I'm on this subject.
Yeah, that's right. I'm really lenient.
I'm
Can you say who you are?
Michael Kennedy is the only.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure for public record.
Yeah.
What was your comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's football, we own the building where one of our tenants is CrossFit, center right next to Durham Motors and. Not far from a lot of other people around the road here. I drove the other end. And we bought the building and we're gonna actually develop it, which I think, music people here. But, our business is construction consulting and we've looked at, we've plans for early development for residential mixed use. We weren't ready for yet, but we'll. But there are a lot of incentives that the SCAP funding is if you have like 50% workforce housing, which is a key part of everything, about 50%, you get a much lower tax rate, a fixed tax rate of 8% of revenue per year. It's a completely different ballgame. And so anyone who's bought property or is owning property, when the whole package is put together, it's actually with the new rates of rental and so forth, the numbers work very well. So I know, and just by chance, we work with those developers every day. They like to run those projects all around New England.
Yeah.
Some of them are island, some of them are outside of Rhode Island and most of Massachusetts overall. But yeah, North Main Street's a great place for it. So disagree with you. I love, having you guys there. Great, but you could make a lot of money and make a lot of people happy developing that. Every time you dish it out of God, you make this. But yeah, I'm right. It's a right clinic, this doing, not doing whatever and all that. And there are a lot of homeless people there or addicted people. And they hang out in the hall and all that, but you can make it work. Like you develop the area and you clean some of that out, it's not gonna stop everything if the numbers work. That's, I'm quite sure, and I'm gonna be able to say. So it is a numbers thing. You gotta make money out of it. But the incentives on the tax and gap funding and all of that. Like that's that, if you put it all together and get it in front of people and get it going, there's no reason why it didn't take off.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking to buy other lots as well.
Oh, okay. It's like Michael.
Michael Kenny.
Right across from like the greenhouse in the cemetery there.
It's where that CrossFit is. Where you see people.
Yeah, generally.
Peter,
I was just gonna say, kind of to answer, I'm sorry, your name,
it's Rachel.
Rachel's question, I think certainly development has to make financial sense for a large developer, but I also think it's about, why hasn't more interesting development happened in the past number of years? I do think it's also kind of a lack of creativity, a lack of vision, and a lack of interest in the sense that, the development that Bob mentioned on 9th Street, very small mixed-use development, it happened. It's great. The people that did it, they had an idea, they do interesting things in the city, they built it. It's really nice to have a chiropractor next door to us.
Yeah.
And, residents there instead of just a ramped asphalt hill
Yeah.
that, was just sitting there for years. So I think developers that have large parcels that they're doing nothing with for long periods of time, I mean, just to me, it's also about a human being just making a decision.
Yeah.
We make the decision to keep our business open. It's hard work. We just keep doing it because it has enough meaning to keep doing it. So we have our reasons for it. So I just think that I think you can make an interesting development work on North Main Street in different places. And, yeah, as you said, it has to make financial sense, but it's also just a lack of vision, or perhaps also a lack of pressure on some of the vacant properties to develop. I'm sure they have their reasons. I'm not a major developer, I'm a small business owner and a small property owner, but I just think there's a lot of opportunity. I acknowledge that, certainly Tom's businesses have been there for a very long time and are, well established, that's your business, that's your family business, makes sense to you. But I remember, North Main Street it has been historically a more urban Main Street. There are many stores that have closed in my lifetime. I'm in my early 40s. They were there, they were thriving. I think it's possible, but it's also, I think, to some extent, an identity crisis. I think of North Main Street and I say, well, yeah, this could become like more and more like Mineral Spring Avenue, for example, in North Providence. Right? I don't want that,
Yeah.
but that's what it
We have
could
to think of it.
become,
Yeah.
where it's just lots and lots of drive-throughs and essentially nobody walking anywhere. Or it could become more like the vision that many of us have been chatting about for the better part of 2 decades.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
it's complex, but I do think good development is possible.
And just as a quick note, I did invite that developer from the 9th Street property today. He's out of town. But was really excited about this, and we're gonna connect one next week and figure out when he can participate, but we just couldn't be here. Sarah, do you have your hand up? Yeah.
I do have a question, something you just said gave me a question for Jess, actually, and you may have touched on this in your presentation at the last meeting, but because this is a certain type of street that there are others in Rhode Island, other places, and the idea that it could go one way or another way, or it was one way or is going to become another way. Did the planning study look at similar corridors in other places and sort of study how they evolved over time?
We didn't get that deep. No.
Yeah, okay. Because it would be interesting to sort of have to look at some case studies.
Mhm. I think there was some discussion about it, but they didn't get into really studying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's a
think one of
piece
the
work.
biggest questions is the chicken and egg issue of if we do the public improvements to make the street itself better, will that encourage more development, or do we wait until developers decide that it's profitable for them and then make those improvements? It's that balancing act that we have to do, and as the government, we can't force the market on private property to be developed. And so that's a struggle, that we have, as Bob said, we can set the stage for all of that, but at the end of the day, we can't force it.
Yeah.
But
I'm
perhaps
just
we
thinking
could
about
make
like
improvements.
opportunity to talk to people in other
Yeah.
places and sort of hear what worked for them, or just, I mean, not, yeah.
I mean, maybe that's.
Changing
something
the
that this
market or
task
anything
force
like that.
can Take on.
Yeah.
Like identify good streets in places like similar to Providence and invite them to talk with us about the
Yeah.
changes that they see.
Yeah.
The other question I have, and I think I know the answer to it, but there's, is there an association for North Main Street of any sort? I don't
There's not.
think so, right?
Nothing,
Ish.
nothing particularly active. We had a merchants association that was meeting regularly for a while. And right now, really, it exists as a Google group. We communicate.
Yep.
But that's about it. And it kind of was an outgrowth of the SNA's members of the Summit Neighborhood Association wanting to revitalize North Main Street, connected to merchants. I was one of them. And we worked on it for a while, but it's been dormant for a long time.
And just to your point about case studies, so I do have an intern, this semester from Brown, who's amazing, I love him, and, he's not on Zoom tonight, but, will be able to help us do some research, so this is something I can, offer up to him. I was just chatting with him about the task force earlier today, he's excited for any sort of research or case studies and stuff, so this sounds like a potential thing with him.
Yeah, kind of following up, a few of the points that have been made, to Jess's point that we can't force businesses to make changes in the development we want. Maybe we can make the argument better, and maybe a starting point for that would be, you know, if you're making the argument that the numbers work, and as you see if they don't, maybe a future meeting, a presentation on sort of some sample numbers for.
The only reason they work.
But I mean, I think that's a good point, right? Because we've certainly seen rents skyrocket, which is bad for other reasons, but that may be the thing that makes like development that wouldn't be economically viable 5 years ago, maybe is now. And I'd love to have like you guys kind of hash out the numbers and see if you can come to some understanding and agreement about like. If it doesn't work, if we're close and.
And maybe
if we
both.
won't work.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's.
Someone invited for.
No, I invited the, True Fox, who did the 9th Street.
Yeah.
He's out of town today, but I think he can use Peter.
Yeah, I talked to
Do it
Peter
with
about
Peter.
development.
Yeah. Okay, any other, so one, this is so great, thank you guys for this conversation, so I feel like this is what we want to do, is kind of, everybody has kind of a slightly different, point of view, it's great. Any other thoughts on zoning and Bob's presentation and future meeting topics that are coming out of this? I'm hearing economic development, incentives, and like what programs do exist or could exist. And this kind of question of like the different business models is a potential future one. And also the next step of asking Logan, who he's not on the Zoom, for maybe some of this case study work. Cool. Excellent. Is it okay for folks, because I want to keep you here for forever, and Rosie has a really great recommendation or things to show us. If we move on to agenda items 2, discussion and recommendations on your return adjustment and safety actions. Awesome. Take it away, Rosie.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks, for inviting me to speak today. Just kind of wanted to touch on kind of typical things that are done in a kind of rapid implementation style when trying to address some key issues. Where would I even?
Did you share screen in the Zoom? All right. Claire, were there things in the chat? Is it possible for me to get a? Were there things in the chat?
What was that?
Were there things in the chat?
In the chat?
Yeah, I thought I saw comments in the chat.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, no, I can leave this later. I just want to make sure people are leaving comments. Go ahead, Rosie.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Rosie Juggle. I'm the chair of the Providence Free and Incomplete Streets Advisory Council. So just wanted to kind of come and share some ideas and get the conversation going about what we can do kind of in the more short term to address some of the safety issues that we're seeing on North Main Street.
And Rosie, if I can just for one quick second, for folks who aren't familiar, the Green Complete Street Advisory Council is an official council of the city. It was created in the Green and Complete Streets Ordinance. So just so folks know that is like an official council of the city, created by ordinance.
So a little bit about myself and my background. I am a transportation engineer, have over 12 years of experience. I have worked for a city government back home in Canada, and also a couple of different transportation consulting firms. Right now, led by Tool Design, so it's a very specific type of work that we do at Tool, which is really centered around safety and active modes infrastructure, and really kind of bringing forward the values of ethics, equity, and empathy in all the work that we do. So today I'm going to kind of start with a bit of a discussion about what North Main Street is like today. I think we've kind of mostly touched on that already. We're all very familiar with the challenges of North Main Street. Kind of talk about what's in a general kind of rapid implementation toolkit. And I also wanted to touch on some of the walk signal policy recommendations that we made through the Green and Complete Streets Advisory Council, and thoughts about how they could potentially extend to state-owned signals. Wanted to kind of show some of these ideas in action as a case study, looking at the Only Street intersection, and then I kind of wanted to bring the discussion back to kind of how we can make these things happen. I know working with a lot of state agencies, it's not easy for us, these state agencies to be, quick. This whole like rapid implementation style is usually better suited for municipal agencies that can really act quickly, that have the resources available, that don't have to go through a giant kind of approval process in order to get some of these projects done. So I think the conversation here today about what partnerships can we forge, what ways do we have to really support RIDOT and get some of these things done outside of the normal processes. So that's kind of what we'll talk about today. So as you know, North Main Street today, I mean, it's got the multimodal users. We got some pedestrians, we've got some cyclists, we've got transit users. We know they're out there, but we also know that it's not very comfortable for all of these users today to be using the street. It's very car oriented, which kind of, if the infrastructure makes you feel that way as a driver behind the wheel, you're going to kind of behave in a certain way according to kind of the built environment around you. So that's kind of the main challenge of how North Main Street looks today. So when we talk about kind of rapid implementation, we're talking about what can be done without kind of digging up the roadway, without changing the curb lines, without changing a bunch of the infrastructure that's in place. What can we do to change kind of the configuration of the corridor or of the intersection to kind of make vehicles or drivers kind of take turns more slowly, or to make pedestrians more visible in an intersection without kind of starting from square one. So this is kind of the general methods that we can do some of these things rather quickly. So a lot of it is kind of like paint and flex posts that you've probably seen projects like this implemented throughout the city. So it could come in the form of intersection improvements such as painted curb extensions, medians, really tightening up the intersections, and again making vehicles travel more slowly. Make the operations at the intersection more clear. Make things like kind of at a right angle if they're not at a right angle already. There's also kind of opportunities for daylighting. So this is to kind of make sure that vehicles are not parking too close to a crosswalk, so that drivers can see any waiting pedestrians. So there's creative ways to do that we've seen kind of closer to the ground campus. There's also signal timing and phasing changes. So signal timing is a little bit more easy to do in some cases. Phasing changes sometimes come with like equipment changes that you also have to do. So we have to be kind of mindful about the limitations when we're talking about rapid implementation. Sometimes there's flexibility to change a signal head if we want to separate a turning movement or something like that. a lot of times, we would rely more so on signal timing, changes or trying to use the signal infrastructure that's already there. These other two that are on the screen, so separated by lanes and bustling lanes, those can also be accomplished with paint and flex posts. But those are more kind of corridor wide type interventions, so they're not, they're kind of more conducive to, you know, pair up with projects like a repaving project. Or like the RIPTA project that's coming up for a bus priority, that might be a nice opportunity for implementing bus lanes like that. So what I kind of want to more focus on is the intersections themselves, and so that would be kind of those other key components there. So to touch on the green complete streets walk signal policy recommendations that I chatted about. So last year, we did some research and pulled together a letter with recommendations for how the city can kind of better prioritize pedestrians through kind of standard signal phasing practices. So that was a letter, and I think it's been shared with all of you.
Yeah, you all have it.
Yeah, that was put together and shared with the city traffic engineer and the city council. Just ways that signals as a standard can kind of prioritize pedestrians more so than trying to eliminate vehicle congestion. So some of these recommendations, call for kind of automatic pedestrian phases, so that's kind of putting the pedestrian phase on recall. So that would eliminate the need to press a button in order to call the pedestrian phase. Right turn on red restrictions, this is something that's kind of more widely advocated for in the transportation community, but it kind of more like almost requires more of like a change in the ordinances or something of municipalities. And some cities have done this across the board, and others kind of picked specific locations or problem intersections where this would help from a safety perspective. So the issue with right turn on red is often when you're driving and you're looking for a gap in when you're at a red light and you're looking for a gap in traffic, you're kind of inching towards the intersection a little bit more to be able to see when it's okay to turn right. And that often blocks the crosswalk. And also like you're looking the opposite way from where a pedestrian might be coming. So you're looking for a gap, a pedestrian might be coming, and then you turn right, and that's an issue. So, you know, implementing more right turn on red restrictions, especially where there's a sightline issue for vehicles looking for gaps. That's always something important to consider. Other things is that we provided thresholds for where leading pedestrian intervals could be beneficial. The city, thank you, Nate, has already implemented some of these recommendations and including leading pedestrian intervals at a lot of the city owned signals. And I got to take advantage of a few of them on our walk here today. So thank you for that. Beyond, so the leading pedestrian interval, and it is effective to a certain extent. It depends on the amount of turning traffic that you're experiencing at a certain signal. So there's a certain threshold of turning traffic that makes an LPI less effective, and where you might need to move to a full turning movement separation, where the crosswalk and the turning movement phase are completely separated in the signal cycling. So we've provided those thresholds as well. And similarly for exclusive pedestrian phases, we provided guidance where that makes sense, where that kind of phasing strategy makes sense. You usually need a pretty kind of critical mass of pedestrian activity. It's also helpful like when there's weird geometry at an intersection and that kind of thing. So that's kind of outlined in the letter as well. And similarly, I think this was touched on in the previous session, but adding missing crosswalks at signals where they don't exist today. So a lot of times if you do see a kind of a crosswalk that's missing on one side of the intersection, but it's provided on the other, sometimes that's because there is really heavy right or left turning traffic that crosses that crosswalk. So instead of having that high conflict, the decision is made just to not provide a crosswalk at all. When in reality, we could do some signal timing and phasing changes to separate those movements instead of just eliminating the pedestrian movement altogether.
Similarly, at a lot of signals, in this area especially, there's, pedestrian phases that are kind of timed, you know, the countdown that happens, when you're crossing the street. That's usually timed and calculated based on the length, of a crosswalk and the like average walking speed of a pedestrian. But sometimes the corresponding vehicle phase is longer than that minimum time, that's calculated. So the crosswalk will end, but the green phase will keep going, and it doesn't take much to just extend that crosswalk phase to match the vehicle phase when it's higher than the minimum.
Oh, yeah, that happens to the Whole Foods. That happens to the Whole Foods, yeah.
Yes. And then another recommendation was to reduce the off-peak cycle lengths at signals. A lot of times you give a lot of green time for each phase during the peak hours because there's a lot of vehicles to process. But off-peak, if we shorten those, it reduces the pedestrian delay, so the crosswalk will come up more often. And there's a kind of less delay for pedestrians, and you know, the more delay we have for pedestrians, the more likely it is that they're gonna do something risky that we wouldn't want to encourage. So like I said, these recommendations were provided for the city through the GCSC, and they've already started to be implemented on city-owned signals. However, the GCSC's jurisdiction kind of ends at city infrastructure, but however, you know, signals owned by RIDOT that do go through kind of heavy urban areas could also apply similar strategies to improve pedestrian priority, because when you're walking down the street, you don't know which signal is city owned or state owned, and to have some consistency, especially in really dense urban areas, I think would be very beneficial. All right, so I'm gonna bring this down to an example of an intersection that's near and dear to my heart, because I walk through it almost every day. So this is the intersection of North Main Street and Olney Street. So I'm fortunate that I live a 5-minute walk from coffee shop, from a Whole Foods, from office supplies, from my doctor on the other side of the street. However, the thing that's between me and all of those services is this intersection, the Olney Street intersection. And it's not particularly pleasant to walk through. However, I make it work. I shoulder check. It's all good. However, I was at a barbecue this summer with some of my neighbors, and one of my neighbors kind of casually mentioned his daily trips to the Starbucks drive-thru. I was like, "You mean that? Like the one that's right across the street?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, and I don't know if all of you are familiar, but it's pretty easy to drive to the Starbucks from Benefit Street, where we live. But this is his drive to get back from Starbucks to the house, because you can actually turn back onto Benefit Street from North Main Street. So this is what he's doing every day to get his Starbucks in the morning. I was like, why would you do that? And then it dawned on me that he has a young child and he doesn't feel comfortable walking through this Olney Street intersection with that child every day. So he would prefer to pack her up into the car, in the car seat, and make this journey daily to get his coffee. And so when we're talking about these improvements for pedestrian safety, we're not just talking about the people who are already out there walking like I am. We're also talking about all the people who don't feel comfortable getting out or not getting into their car to begin with and taking a short walk across the street. So that's where this becomes really important for all of us, because how many cars that we're sitting in traffic with are people that could be walking if they felt safe and comfortable doing so. So let's talk a little bit about what makes this intersection a challenge. So right now, this is the Olney Street intersection. So there are push buttons required to cross. They were malfunctioning a couple of weeks ago. And I did notice that pedestrians generally don't bother pressing the button because they've kind of gotten used to this fact that sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But you do need to press it, or else the crosswalk light doesn't come on. So when folks are kind of getting into this habit of not pressing the button, it becomes
challenging because drivers are like, well, the walk sign hasn't gone on, so like, why are you in the crosswalk? So that becomes a kind of daily occurrence, where the crosswalk light doesn't always come on. There was, although I will, say that there was a pedestrian interval, leading pedestrian interval recently implemented across that crosswalk, which is great. It's helped a lot, but you have to press the button for that to come up. The other thing that is out there already is kind of a painted little curb extension on this corner. Sometimes it has flex posts kind of in relation to the bike lane that goes up only. Sometimes there's flex posts and sometimes there's not. And they always remove them in the winter for maintenance. This other crosswalk across North Main Street itself, that also requires a push button, but it stops all of the vehicle traffic because in order to cross North Main Street, every vehicle movement in this intersection would conflict with it. So they have to stop everybody. And the last thing is that Benefit Street here at the bottom, where it meets North Main Street, it kind of ends up with this double wide lane approaching the intersection, which has so much space that a vehicle waiting to turn straight can be out of the way enough that a vehicle wanting to turn right will just kind of skirt in next to them. So it's kind of like a de facto right turn lane. So, yeah, I think this is kind of an example of, you know, the minimum pedestrian accommodations being met. You know, there's enough crossing time when you do press the button to get across the street. And, yeah, so the pedestrian accommodations are met, but it's kind of a minimal, just barely, I don't know.
Can I comment on that really quickly? As a driver, that space is so ambiguous, all of it.
Yeah.
It's like, you hope you're doing the right thing, but
Yeah.
you might not be, because even that, and I have to say the striping, the diagonal striping on the right turn from North Main to Olney is really helpful, even without the flex posts, but I've been driving that a lot lately. Thanks to the Washington Bridge, it's changed the way I get home.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the highway anymore, and I love that drive, but yeah, it's a lot of ambiguous space, and it would be really neat to find a way to clarify it for everyone. Anything, I don't know, yeah, it's not my area of expertise, but thank you, Josie, for this, Rosie.
Yeah, and I have a question. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah,
sure. Thank you. I'm a representative for Becky Kisline, and I ride my bike a lot. And I ride it down Olney Street to get to the State House or downtown or whatever. And I am never sure. In fact, I'm always sure I'm doing it wrong. And it's incredibly challenging to, like, I usually ride down, I hop on the sidewalk around the curve, and then I cross at 1 and 4 and then go down where there's no protected lane. But that feels like the safest way for me to get from my house to the State House, because there is the protected lane on Olney. So I just wanted to raise up also that we don't connect our bike paths, and that is a particular intersection that is confusing for cyclists.
Yes, absolutely. The other issue, you know, you are able to turn right on red, and because of how far back some of these other vehicles are before they, when they get their green light, and how long it takes for them to go. Oftentimes, these folks just see a big gap in the cycle, and they think it's clear for them to go as well.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, so what can we do at this intersection with very little kind of capital changes? So we could, as a first measure, set the crosswalk that crosses Olney Street, so at number 1 there, to automatic recall. So this would mean that pedestrians don't have to press the button in order to cross across that street. It always comes up in the cycle. So right now there is kind of video detection at that intersection. So if there isn't a vehicle you know, coming up North Main Street, but there is a vehicle waiting at Olney Street, it'll cut that green time short and serve the turning vehicles. So that is an effort to, you know, reduce congestion. But it does have some implications to pedestrian safety. So that's where that balance of increasing the priority for pedestrians at, you know, at the risk of folks waiting 10 more seconds at the intersection in our cars, could be a fair trade-off. The crosswalk across North Main Street, as I mentioned, does have to stop all of the vehicle traffic, for folks that are, crossing North Main Street, and there, anecdotally, there does seem to be less demand for that crosswalk because there is that, other crosswalk kind of closer to, Whole Foods that most people take. So it would make sense that that one stays as a pedestrian actuation, so you press the button and then you can stop all the traffic in order to cross North Main Street. But because it's, all of the vehicle movements are stopped during that time, the other crosswalk across only could also be activated at that same time. So it could just function as a, exclusive pedestrian phase. So that would mean that the only street intersection is served twice, but I mean, that time is already being given to, the number 2 crosswalks. So why not also give it to the number 1 crosswalk at the same time? Most pedestrians at that intersection, including myself, know that when that number 2 is activated, that it's safe to go because all of the vehicles have to stop, but the indications don't say that that's okay.
There's a question.
Oh, I can't see behind me. Yeah, do you mind taking a question?
It's real fascinating, it might even help. So a couple of things that I noticed, one is the island in the middle of most of North Main Street. I think it's there because of the trolleys back in the day, it's too expensive to move a lot of things. So they left certain parts and they just focused on those, put that aside. Right now, you got the lights, they're, if I'm not mistaken, they're all 8 inches. They're all very dull, they're original lights that we as all streets usually have. Right now, they actually have LEDs that are a lot larger and a lot brighter. You could go with the 12 inch instead of the 8 inch, we get more see. Now, I don't think there's too many people here, maybe a couple, that know Colonel Stone. Colonel Stone used to run the Providence State Police. He was told to change the police cars red lights because it was destroying too many police cars. Just like red cars were higher insurance because people got hypnotized to the color and slammed into it. Are we thinking about putting a probe in the middle of them like a lot of cities do to wake the drivers damn up? Because they didn't stop when my brother was.
Yeah.
That copper flew through with a red light sitting in front of them. To me, I think something that is blinking, something that's catching, and even in before the red light, to actually have red light ahead blinking to give them fair warning. There's not too much you can do because it is a state highway. I don't think they're gonna bottleneck that road at all, ever. I think it should be right at least where the cemetery is, because most of the business is on the right hand side, the left. If you went from the beginning to the cemetery to the end of the cemetery, and actually took it and make it a dog park, you just bottlenecked it and made it slow down. Right now, it's an airport. And unless you catch their opinions of driving, you're gonna watch them kill a lot more people than we've already seen. And I've seen this, just like Mr. Badway here. We've been around since the 70s. I used to walk to school at St. Raymond's, which was right there, and I lived on Nesbitt Street. I watched a lot of people die. Some my age, and I was only 10 at the time, and some a lot older, like my brother the other day. So it's not just a yesterday thing, it's a many day thing. And unless you check something to catch people's eyes and catch people's awareness, they're gonna do this again and again. And if you just think about white lines as saving someone's life, you're gonna be fooling yourself. To me, I think it's the increasing of the light size, the bulb in itself, and then the brightness. As well as that light.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this isn't necessarily a replacement for full infrastructure changes. This is kind of a stopgap. This is what can we do now? What can we do quickly? Knowing that we do need kind of more wholesale kind of infrastructure and you know, design changes on the street. So I'll just go through the rest of this and then we can.
Can I do one
talk.
Actually, can we wait, let
Yeah,
her
okay.
finish, because we're running out of time, and I just wanna make sure she has enough time to finish.
All right, great. So the other thing, like we mentioned, to help kind of organize the approach to that intersection a little bit better, to make it a little bit clearer what lane you should be in and how you should be operating. You could extend that existing kind of painted curb extension a little bit wider so that it kind of only leaves one car's width at that approach. So that if you're turning right, you have to kind of wait your turn behind the queue of vehicles before making a movement. They would, in order to like ensure compliance, you would probably need some sort of barrier treatment or like construction barrels. You could use the water filled barrels or the temporary kind of flex posts. Just something to like vertically make sure that folks were using the curb extension as intended. And then also pairing that with a no right turn on red for those northbound right turns. As I said, it's not very clear all the time when those gaps are, and they kind of try and take advantage. And it oftentimes with the LPI that's implemented, pedestrians get a little bit more of a head start, but vehicles often try and use that gap to make that right turn as well. So those are just some ideas at one intersection. I think it kind of would take kind of a more broad look or a more detailed look actually at some of the other intersections and some of the other opportunities that are available kind of at some of the other intersections. But I did want to kind of start the discussion with Rideout's recent strategic highway safety plan and some of the vision and goals that were set forth in that. They were very strong in their language that, 0 deaths is the acceptable number. And we know on North Main Street that we've had more than that in the past year. So in, furtherance of their vision in their strategic highway safety plan, which has been adopted, there are things that we can potentially do to North Main Street now to make things safer. And work towards those goals. But like I said, it will probably take some partnership with the city who may be more nimble in like doing some of these short-term interventions. I know with state agencies to kind of go through the whole 9 yards to get things approved and funded and designed and built. So they usually deal with really capital projects. So for these short-term things like this, really looking to the task force, to Jess and to Sean about what mechanisms are available to kind of work together to implement some of these things.
Awesome, thank you. Before we get questions from the public, just want to see if there's any questions from the task force, and I'm also going to preview that at the next meeting, we will be talking about lighting, so thank you for that. And we have some really great, I won't spoil it, but we have some really great like drone footage and how the lights, how bright the are, and like some lighting instruments.
Yeah, on the ground, yeah.
Some on the ground data.
Like brightness.
Yeah.
It changes, not by much. What a light, where it is now, the red light's like 785, to change it to a 12-inch, it's like 885. You throw it up, 12 is like 995, and take the back on these people charging it. If not, you change an ordinance, so a person like the person who can $20, give them a $2,500 ticket. If they didn't kill anybody or own any property, give them a $500 ticket. And take that money and actually fund some of these food projects.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So just as that preview for next time, that is going to be a big topic of conversation for lighting. Yes.
So I don't have a question, but I do have something, as far as the partnerships between city, Rideout, other partners. Sean, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, but this might be outside of your wheelhouse, the like lending library that Rideout has started for the short-term sort of like pilot projects with the materials to do these kinds of things, like the short-term pilot projects. I know that was getting started a few months ago. I want to say Pam told me Pawtucket or somebody had gotten like the first crack at those materials, but I think that's something that we could work on for interventions on North Main Street to see what works. And different changes that could be made on sort of like that quick basis.
Yeah, definitely, and I did speak with Pam after the first meeting to kind of, catch them, that section up to speed, because they'll be the ones managing, the PM of the project for the long-term improvements. And certainly, there's a lot of resources, and I know you're familiar with the grant opportunities as well, and they have their ears on potential grant.
And I have a
additional
call with
funding.
Pam tomorrow,
Oh,
so we'll be
perfect.
talking about a lot of
Great.
this, so that's something that I can bring up with Pam tomorrow. Yeah.
Any other questions or
I
comments?
have a question, I think mostly for you, Sean, just trying to understand, like, some of these recommendations seem great and seem like, as Rosie was saying, kind of short-term implementable. I'm wondering if you know, or if you can kind of find out how much appetite there is at RIDOT for kind of making some of the kinds of changes that were recommended here, like the no turn on red, some of the, maybe physical barriers in places where people are using shoulders with silk lanes for turns, like, is this stuff like realistic as, I'm still thinking of this in terms of we have a sort of pedestrian safety emergency, and the long-term stuff is super important, but what can we change on the ground in the next few months? Like, can we take an intersection like that and make some of those common sense, like signal timing changes that are anticipated to have minimal impact on traffic flow volume? Like, is that something that could happen within a month or two?
Yeah, I think certain things, can be implemented quickly, striping season, unfortunately, that starts in
That to me seems like more of a medium term thing, yeah.
medium term, and once again, it just happens in the winter, and again, doing the posts,
Yeah.
mentioned that they get removed in the winter, we have to deal with plowing and things like that. But yeah, those are things that can be implemented short term. In terms of signal timings and changing phases to exclusive for pedestrians, I'm open to that. Obviously, I would have to, move it up the chain in terms of approvals. I think, or at least starting my vision at least pilot, like maybe pick one intersection and implement it there really quickly and watch it. Because there is, with this corridor, a lot of the traffic signals are coordinated with each other. So, by implementing an exclusive pedestrian phase, there can be impacts at times to all, it knocks everything out of coordination. And that's just something we would want to have the information on. What are the impacts? I'm not saying, no, you can't do it. I just,
that's like,
yeah.
possibly creating issues for the R line and everybody. wants
Yeah,
to-
yeah, and
so,
obviously
yeah, I get
glad
it.
Rift is at the table too, because there's other interests involved as well. So I just want to make sure we have the data to bring to the people that may ultimately say, yes, let's.
But even
let's
as
do
like a
that.
shorter term thing, like the no turn on red that you recommended there, I imagine that would have a minimal impact on traffic flow volume.
I think so, and just-
Shorter term, or the increasing of the light timing, so it's like the full phase instead of.
Yeah, timing adjustments, small time, those can be made.
Particularly if it's just a
We've
pedestrian
we've actually been kind of, making some fixes.
And you did the LPI thing already.
LPI
happened, which I
we
think
did.
is important to call out, that's one
Prior
of your
to-
recommendations that already happened.
Yes, the one stage crossing, after the first meeting, I had our maintenance people go out and fix what they could find that was insecure. Again, if anyone finds things that are broken,
That's
let me know.
another business
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
that broken signal that you mentioned to me last week, and I reported it to RIDOT, and Nate, you were on the email thread with that, there's a little confusion about ownership, but like, they were out there and fixed it the next day, which is also incredible.
Yeah, we have 3 traffic signal technicians in the state, so we have 800 plus signals. But they do an amazing job. They're very responsive. And I notified them they were out there the next day and go through to them. And I did walk the corridor soon after the meeting. And I just want to give kudos. The police are still on, but I saw 3, a car pulled over. Actually, even pedestrians that are jaywalk, they were talking to them as well. So they were definitely out there. Unfortunate, but one thing I would want to bring to the task force as a recommendation would be to perform a road safety assessment. And obviously you've been doing a lot of homework and I think there's some good suggestions already, but I think it would be a good idea in terms of we're all kind of in this together as a task force and really looking at the issues at the same time.
Have there been any recently done in North Main, like in response to the fatalities?
Where did Doyle, between Doyle and Olin, there was one.
Okay,
Yeah, we focus at the intersection of Doyle.
is that something that
We'll
can be
watch
shared
that.
with us?
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be great.
Sorry, what was this done as well? A road safety audit?
Safety audit.
How many years have we got?
Years of building.
Less than 5 years, and they've implemented the recommendations.
For that
Okay.
section.
When did they implement them? Like through the construction project?
Couple years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last 50 years.
So within 2 years.
So if it was 2 years, then we've had, I think, a couple of fatalities since then.
It's true. That's something to look at. And were you also talking about an assessment, like us all assessing it together at some point, or what?
Yeah, selecting staples, you know. Don't want to just make it too big, but you know, pick, you know, it could be
Yeah.
majority of the committee, just, we typically. You have, you know, RIDOT, you know, representative in federal highway, because, you know, that they do assist with funding. The city, you know, engineering, DPW, EMS, you know, the police, fire. And then other stakeholders, you know, from the community or sometimes the business owners, it just gets a lot of perspective too.
I mean, the biggest thing these RCs do, they identify accident trends, and even just besides accidents, just walking and listening to people's experiences, trying to identify where the issues are, matching those up with safety improvements. I mean, the engineers will, you know, they have access to studies and so forth that determine which measures are the most effective.
So we have an independent safety consultant that even before, you know, we walk it, they compile the data and crash out, so they'll have that ready for the, you know.
Yeah, I've administered a few road safety audits before.
Okay, maybe this is something like I can follow up with you two or
Sure.
about, and like what the next steps would be, and Aaron can join that. I'm like, please.
Yeah, it's meant to be a public partnership, that's the
Oh, great.
idea of road safety, that
Oh, that's great.
all stakeholders are involved, not just engineers in a bubble.
But there's still like a methodology.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I figured with that methodology is how we could implement that.
So are you saying that they come and you walk North Main?
It's what
It's
I-
usually like intersections.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great, because
Yeah.
then they could see how difficult it is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
cross the street
Specific.
instead of us just saying, I think that's a great,
That's
that's
saying
great.
last week I spent a lot of time on North Main Street at North Main intersection. Rachel was down there last week collecting some lighting data. I think you really have to spend time down there and make the crossings to sort of experience, like, just watch what happens when you're standing on the side of the road. It can feel like a pretty crazy place.
Yeah, I'm a
Are you
driver.
trying not to
I'm
give
a-
any spoilers about our walk?
Yeah, yes, that's when people come to the next meeting, guys, come for it.
Yeah.
But I'll follow up with Nate and Sean and Aaron, and we'll talk about next steps next, that sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, the city owns part of that North Main Street.
Yeah.
I think the city, right up, maintains some of the signals, but there's probably a lot of things that we can partner with. I mean, like that striping and the flexibles. I'm not so sure that right up really would object to that.
Well, just to clarify,
So,
that
That's something-
intersection only, like RIDOT owns from Randall, Doyle and north. And the city
Oh, it's the-
owns the
Right,
roadway
right.
south of
But-
that. The
but
signal, I think,
the signals
Yeah.
are all owned by
which
that.
is,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you know,
Right,
there's,
partnership.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, I mean, not even some of the smaller don't necessarily need to go through the process like the state traffic commission. Which isn't necessarily all that onerous, I mean, we get stuff done very quickly in
Yeah,
terms of that, so.
I did want to add, so in terms of like no turn on red or any recommended changes to traffic control devices, that does go through the state traffic commission, which it's not RIDOT, but you know, it's a committee, something similar to this that it's various representatives of, you know, we call the state police and the governor's office has a representative, and they're the ones that would vote to, and I'm the secretary of this, so I would make the recommendation based on whether studies done. They would vote on that.
Oh, cool.
It is a separate entity from that.
So if we were trying to get a sense of like what traffic calming measures like would be on the table or off the table from RIDOT's perspective, apart from signal stuff, that wouldn't have to go to the commission, right? That's something that's made more like an administrative order.
I think it depends what it is.
Okay, I guess what I'm wondering, like, and there was a reporting in the Providence Journal that RIDOT spokesman person last couple of weeks ago, that said that speed bumps were like off the table. I know we have a couple like in front of Whole Foods. I think it'd be good to get some
That's on
clarity.
the,
That's on the city side,
That's the city on the strategy. But I think it'd be good to have like some more discussion with Rydot about like, okay, is that really off the table under all circumstances? Is there a reason for that? If so, like, kind of be some discussion about that, you know, because like speed is going to be a piece of what we need to do here. We'll talk about that in a few meetings out. But I'm concerned about having, you know, measures off the table, but if there are things that are off the table for a reason, like if we could have a list of like, we can maybe do this, we definitely.
Right, I think that's part of,
a good start.
that'll be part of the RSA process, and so that creates that document. And you have all the recommendations, near term, medium term, long term, and nothing is off the table at that point. So, for example, say it's speed humps, and RIDOT's current policy is that we don't install speed humps on certain types of roads, you know, like North Main Street. That policy could change 5-10 years from now. So you don't want to keep something out of a document where you look back 5 years from now and say, oh, no, that's changed, now we can.
I guess my question is though, like,
And then we're gonna have, because we're gonna talk about speed limit today, so I wanna make sure. I get those speed test for soon, so.
Yeah, I just, you know, if we're trying to make emergency changes to kind of keep people from getting hurt and killed, you know, we want to think of as much as possible as we can on the table, and so we talk about maybe some change 5 or 10 years from now. I'm kind of more concerned about what can happen in the next like couple of months.
American hospital ambulances usually bump staff needed while they're flying the patient across the city.
And we'll,
Get to these spots, and then you got the big.
I think it's just about speed humps. It's more,
Yeah.
about what can we do in the short
I
term.
mean, would it make sense to have like a topic on this?
Yeah,
It's been more like
I
a
would- conversation.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's-
Separated one.
And that's why I think, again, ours, you know, my vision is hopefully we could, you know, convene and have something in March, so.
Yeah.
And some of those near term would be part of that, yeah, other things that we can do right now in the meantime, like, you know, I think we can as well.
And then we're about to lose a few task force members who have to bring kids to various locations, and it's getting late, so I do wanna make sure we have time for public comment. Are there any other like burning things that task force members wanna say, and then gonna public comment, and we'll also say our next meeting, I'll send around some potential dates for the next meeting after running them by the clerks, but it'll be more like a monthly thing. This was scheduled to take advantage of Bob, and when we could get Bob, he's not here, so I don't know, I'm only here, is he here? Cause that's not Bob, but he's done. But it'll be more like once a month, so don't feel like it's gonna be a many-hour commitment every other week. It'll be more of a once a month, but we will continue the momentum and work in between, particularly in the Aaron and how to do my work.
So, sorry, did anybody want a copy of the presentation?
Stack here, and it's also on the portal, so if you want to more electronically. And I know you've been waiting so patiently for public comment. Michael, do you want to come in?
Sure. My original one, we have to do a no right turn, and it's gonna work. So I was a little disappointed to hear this speed bump, speed bump. Because, we're right across from the cemetery, and between Ranch Ave and Woodland Road, and another stretch, which is the highway.
Yeah.
People, speedway.
Yeah.
And no one's actually, there's no business at the cemetery.
Yeah.
There's no parking. So people park across there and almost get killed every time running across. Okay, and it's a long stretch, and it's the rapid transit, and it's the doctor's office on our side. And there's no immediate access, you have to go all the way, you go a long way to the bus stop.
Yeah.
I'm sure that doesn't mean anyone in the area or the city with access to public transportation, anything else. And we're right there, we want to develop more.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, traffic being slowed at that point, in that long stretch.
Yeah.
But no one ever got people lights and everything.
Yeah.
So I thought, that like we had a Whole Foods, great, something blinking and all that. But to have that something that would take years in the making would be problematic for development, I think.
Yeah.
Of that
There's
stretch.
something shorter term.
So that's really, you have to slow traffic. And you have to let people cross and be able to park and get. Otherwise, that a long stretch along the cemetery there, there's a big part of North Main, it's not being spelled. I can tell you. Because we would be part of that, we would have
Yeah.
pretty big development, so we'd like to be right there.
Yeah, and particularly if you want to just see a giant parking lots there, people are gonna want to park on both sides and not.
Yeah, there's all kinds of parking there, and it's not busy enough, but people that are there are taking their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go to someone, Val hasn't asked a question yet. Yeah, part-
Oh, I was asking for a
Oh, yeah,
That's fine.
Val has stood up, so we're gonna go with Val and then you have the question, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I called on you.
Hi, I'm Val Reicher. I'm from Providence Street Coalition, where I'm an organizer and a volunteer with Rhode Island Transit Riders. My comment tonight is that I want to present myself as a person who is vulnerable on North Main Street. I am a non-driver. I've been car-free since 2015. Since 2018, I wear a medical bracelet, and that means that I don't drive at all. I surrendered my driver's license. You're all welcome. I'm no longer on the road putting you at risk. And I'm on North Main Street to catch a bus nearly every day. And it's extremely dangerous for me. I'm extremely vulnerable. I'm a senior citizen. I'm not completely low income, but I'm fixed income. And I want to talk about the equity issues in your data collection work that you plan to do, which I approve of. Your data collection often does not include me. I am invisible in this process. I have become acquainted with being invisible in this process, and it is an equity issue. Ride-out counts cars. I'm sorry, but that's the way it appears to me. That a lot of the policy that comes out of our state policies and our local policies is driven by car data and not by human data. And Jess, I want to thank you for the work that the comprehensive plan has done to put in front of my eyes this year, this past year, data that shows me census information that I am not in the minority in my neighborhood in Providence. In the last neighborhood where I rented an apartment in Providence, we're mostly car-free people. Not the minority. The majority. And not in every town in Rhode Island, but here, we might be the majority of the people who live near your business are on foot. Either walking to their destination, walking to their bus, or riding a bike like some of my friends did. And we are never in a fair fight with the car. And I'm sorry we lost you. We are never in a fair fight with a car. A car has got a metal exterior, and I am soft tissue. And that is not a fair fight. Okay, so please collect data. I show up. When bike riders show up. Because most of the time when I see these conversations happen, all I see is car data. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Rachel, do you have a question, Michael?
I can do that. I can clarify after.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Any other folks, Christian, oh, we got, oh, wait, before, yeah, you, and then Christian. Yeah.
I was, what's your name again?
Jamie.
Jamie, I agree with you, because when my brother was in the issue for speed bumps, because I know that street in front of it. But I also had reconstruction on my spine after I fell off my building. And I know that hitting bumps at a main road straight from where the accident was, from the construction site to that hospital, I would have been paralyzed at the waist out, and I was already looking like I was gonna be in a wheelchair. That said, that's why I was saying we should bottleneck right where that cemetery is from the beginning to the ending, because that would slow it down. And you could even add where that island is, pocket for those people, because it's all on the right. So you beautify the area, you'd make it more residential. However, I do agree with Mr. Bagley, it's more, automotive, but it still could be where they park their cars and still use those places for automotive businesses. But at the same time, the bottleneck from that side and from the other side of that cemeteries will have now slowed that traffic from going 100 and something.
Yeah,
Straight down the road.
Yeah, we have lots of traffic calming tools that we can use, and yeah, I don't mean to harp on speed humps, that was just kind of one thing that came up recently. But yeah, all of that, what can we do, what's on the table?
Speed homes have, people are very passionate about speed homes.
Yeah.
Christian, I think, and Dylan, did you have your hand up too? Yeah. And then I see you.
Thanks, Christian Roseland. I live on 842 Oak Street, 4 blocks from North Main. I'm also the Ward 3 coordinator for Providence Service Network. We advocate for more housing, more mixed use, more density, and more non-car transportation options. Sometimes I walk, sometimes I bike, sometimes I drive. I find that I drive more often these days, mostly because between where I need to get and where I am and where I'm going is a state maintained road that's run by RIDOT, which is utterly hostile to getting there any other way. I want to comment on North Main. North Main has been a lot of things over the years that it's been there, and it can be what we want it to be and what we make it. As mentioned by Mr. English, in the 1940s, it was a streetcar running down the middle of North Main. It was a very different street, a very different road then. I don't think that North Main's primary purpose has to be as a means for cars to get rapidly from one point to another. And if you want to go to Key West, 195 is a quarter-mile away. That will get you there, not North Main. We would like to see some changes to land use around to make North Main a better place to live and work and shop. We'd like to see you be able to build on North Main, and we'd like to see the local property owners. We'd like to see some changes to the tax structure that make it easier so that it's more expensive to squat a vacant lot and less expensive to build housing and real estate. I understand that's a different commission. But the biggest problem that we have on North Main Street is that it is utterly hostile to anything but getting somewhere else rapidly on a car. And I know this because I go down North Main Street regularly. My son, who's 13, takes the Vito down there. We avoid North Main Street. When I bike, I avoid that intersection at Doyle. I go around to get on the benefit because North Main Street is utterly hostile and extremely dangerous. And I'm mostly concerned about, there's still some work that needs to be done on the city side. I'm mostly concerned about the portions of North Main Street that are maintained by RIDOT because that's where people are being killed. Those streets are extremely dangerous. I would like to see pedestrian signal priority, and let's break that down for what that means. When I cross North Main Street, when I hit the button and wait to cross North Main Street, it gives me 8 seconds before the countdown starts. And this is at Rochambeau, this is also at Smithfield. I timed it. In that 10 seconds that it's counting down, cars are given the green light, and they're busy turning into the pedestrian lane where I'm trying to walk with my son. I can't imagine what this is like for an elderly person, for a disabled person, or for a smaller child. This is lethal street design, and it needs to be addressed immediately. Now, I understand there's concerns with RIPTA, but if we want RIPTA to be able to go faster there, you need signal priority for RIPTA and dedicated bus lanes. I do not believe that this is an adequate reason to prevent the pedestrian priority. When pedestrians are crossing, cars do not have a green light to go through the intersection. It's not safe. It's not safe for me as an adult. It's not safe for children. This is the biggest, as I see it, this is the biggest barrier to turning North Main Street into what we would all like to see it be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christian. Dylan, did you?
I'll keep it pretty brief. My name is Dylan Giles. I'm with Providence Streets Coalition and organizer. As you know, in the last year, there have been 3 fatalities on North Main Street. Michael, your brother had an ignition, so sorry about that. 85-year-old Vonda, that's his name. And then 1 year ago, February 14th, Zachary Richardson was killed. And so we'll be holding a vigil on that date, the 1-year anniversary of Zachary's death, to remember all 3 victims and to call for all of the street safety improvements we talked about tonight. So we invite all of you on this task force to come to walk the street with us. It's called Love and Remembrance on North Main Street. It's Valentine's Day. We very much love the people that live on North Main Street, the people who lost their lives on North Main Street and their loved ones. We hope you guys will all join us.
What time is that, Tom?
5:30.
Thanks.
I can make sure the notice gets sent with that. I'll BCC everybody so it's not a big violation, but with the dates, and I can include that because I think live is going to be a graphic. And then, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Kathleen Gannon with Ribite and with the Green Fleet Streets Advisory Council. And I just want to thank you first off for convening this group. It's a nice wide broad spectrum of interests and expertise. And I think that's helpful. I think it's my fondest hope that we can, make this a much friendlier place, and I just have some advice about, some work that perhaps, I could ask you to do, so that we can really make the changes that we need. First off, I'm hoping that you can take some time in your, task force to do some forensic analysis about some of those previous plans and why they weren't implemented, why they are on the shelf. They were referred to many times at the last meeting, and I'm sure they were also very passionate and wanted changes to happen, and very little of that work was implemented, and it would be useful to know why. I also hope that you are going to take some time to review best practices in other municipalities. Hoboken, New Jersey has had 0 traffic deaths for over 4 years now, and they have implemented many street level, interesting things to help that happen. And many solutions are out there. Hoboken seems to have found a magic, bunch of practices to put together, and we can emulate that stuff. We don't have to invent everything brand new. I also just want to enter into the record that there are plans in place. I hope you will refer to the Great Streets Initiative Plan and also the bicycle mobility plan, the statewide plan for this part of Providence, because a lot of very good work was done for those plans. The bicycle mobility plan was vetted by the public. So the things are there. There are resources for you to review, and please take advantage of some of the work that other good groups like yours have done in the past.
Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that. And for the previous plans, I also want to thank on the Zoom right now is Annalise, with the Summit Neighborhood Association, and she has a collection of all the past plans that have happened in the last like 3 decades, and she's going to give them to me next week. So she's got physical copies in her home. So thank you, Annalise. I'm excited to take in on those plans. And we did have a presentation on Vision Zero at the Special Committee on the Environment and Resilience in this past October. And there's a really great memo and presentation on that on the Open Meetings portal, which I'm happy to make available. That was a presentation, and there may soon be a resolution adopted by council related to that. So I wanted to make notes about that. And last but not least, oh, Kim first, then Kim. Yeah, it's your hand first.
Hi guys, my name is Victor Martel. I have lived on North Main for a few decades now. I was there a few weeks ago when they were peeling someone off the concrete in front of Whole Foods. I was there right as the police responded. Wasn't a pretty sight. And then I attended the last task force meeting. I was on Zoom, and I was shocked. I heard a business owner accuse bicyclists as the primary issue. I heard people blaming homeless people, and I'm continuing to hear it. Well, we know the issue is car infrastructure. That is the issue. And let me give a little note to the many business owners in here. I can't visit your businesses because I'm too scared to visit. I cannot cross the street. I have to literally drive to your business when I could essentially just walk it in 2 minutes. But I have to drive because I'm too scared to cross the road. And there are studies on this. If you cater to all modes of transit, your business goes up. There are so many studies on this. It is conclusive at this point. I don't know why business owners aren't considering this. We saw this happen on Hope Street. We saw every freaking business owner come out, no bike lane, we don't want it. And their business suffers. And a lot of them go out of business because of it. And we're gonna learn the hard way again in North Main. I don't know why we're not learning from this. There's a lot of good suggestions here. I think we should also decriminalize jaywalking. Jaywalking is a very transportationist term coined by the automobile industry many decades ago. States have already done this. We got to actually increase the penalty for human pedestrian. The person who killed your brother and people run over other people, they're not really penalized. They get maybe a few years in prison at most. There's a saying that if you want to kill someone, make sure they're on the bike, make sure they're walking, because they always get away with it. I think that if some, like some other countries, if you are waiting at a crosswalk, you should get priority no matter what, forget the lights. That should be the law. If a motorist sees a pedestrian waiting to cross the street, then they should yield, period. Secondly, I'm sorry to pick on, I'm not sorry to pick on Ride. We should be ultimately remove Peter Elviti, fire him. We should get rid of Heather Gately as well. Both of them have continued to lie to the public and misdirect them. They, in addition, I think people or legislators or whoever should consider charges against Ride pertaining to negligence, because they do not consider anything other than costs. And it's killing us, literally. I have a lot more to say, but I just wonder where this is gonna go. We've had so many studies on this already. And ultimately, I think you're gonna present a very well-rounded study. Here, Mayor Smiley, here, Governor McKee, do something, and they're not gonna do it. Because that's happened every freaking time.
Thank you, Victor. And just to clarify, there's not a study coming out of this. From my perspective, Councilwoman LaFortune did a really great process with the planning department. So this isn't us creating more recommendations, this is us as a task force making some things happen together using the studies that have already happened. I definitely don't need to put my name on anything. I just want to use what Nirva created and the public participated in and planning did as well. So there won't be a recommendation in terms of like a study. It'll be like, let's actually just like do some of these things together that are coming up at the meetings. That's the goal.
Correct. And I did meet the mayor before coming here, and that's why I was late. And usually I can tell you when I get bullshit straight out, you know. The mayor was very, very zoned in, very, very listening. I had the chief of police there, I had the city developer there. So we had a very good meeting prior to coming in. Yeah, I don't think he wants to do this for the fun of it, but at the same time, I guess everything else has to have a process to make the change right. But I think they're gonna do a change.
I will also clarify, I don't work for the mayor, I'm on the city council for the mayor, and many of his staff here, which I appreciate. And also I do not work there. I love the mayor, I think he's great, but we work in partnership, which is why we're on the table. I think that's also something I hear that question from neighbors a lot. And Grant, you get the last word, and then we will, and thank you, Sarah, and then we've got.
Sorry.
But Grant, you have your public comment, and then we will adjourn.
All right, well, my first public comment is a question, and that is, I have made some suggestions at the last meeting, reading them in short-term category, and I didn't get any answers to my suggestions and recommendations, so what have you heard in the last?
Yeah, so we, Aaron and I, and also Vice Chair and I have been talking about the things that come in at the last meeting, and we're working on some next steps for a number of recommendations. And we're seeing some those conversations. So they weren't all the rest of the meeting, that makes sense. So, I think one of the things you brought up is reducing this moving to 20, which I'll just be honest, I don't think that is something we're doing in the near term. People are already going 50 and a 25. I don't think just reducing it is actually the case, but that could be a conversation, but it's probably not one of the first ones to do. Just to address it. But we talked about it, and we do have a conversation about
Future meeting, specifically focused on speed and strategy.
like
So, you know,
how we actually review the
Yeah.
speed people are going, based on some of the data we're getting from the police.
How to reduce it?
how to make vehicles move more slowly.
Yeah.
Is-
That's a question.
There are many
It is
tools in
different.
the toolbox.
Well,
for-
I mean, that, that's on the first thing that I suggested at the last
Yeah,
meeting.
but I'm just so you know, there are lots of follow-up conversations that happen.
Fine, I'm glad you're having a conversation, but you're looking for something short term, something that doesn't involve much expenditure of dollars at all whatsoever. And so I thought the idea of simply reducing the speed limit from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour was a simple, straightforward proposition.
No, I appreciate that.
And I will reiterate what I said then, and that is that my experience way back when I helped back some neighborhood association and extended to the area that it included, and we heard from folks who lived off Oak Street, that they were having a hard time getting onto the Oak Street by car, because folks were zipping down Oak Street and Cypress Street, and I was boy, and we were told by the police department that first you have to put a sign,
Yeah.
Say 25 miles an hour, hopefully, you know, that's
Right.
a universal citywide speed limit. And let that be there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll go out and ticket it. And made a difference, made a difference. And so what I suggested at the last meeting was put signs on North Main Street saying 20 miles an hour. You know, you can have them every, 3-4 blocks, but how much the sign cost? Not that much. And let those signs sit there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then go out and ticket, and that'll make a difference. And I
These
don't,
have put up those blinking signs and other things on North Main, just to let you know, they have been putting up more signs, not necessarily the permanent ones, but they, still like flash and people are going over. the speed limit. So that is, I just wanna make sure that. Whichever I like.
when you're driving, you got a lot of things to pay attention to.
Mhm.
When I drive, my priority is pedestrian. So I'm not looking at blinking signs, because half the time those blinking signs are just saying, don't drive drunk, or, have a good day, or whatever. Or, the construction issue or something like that, or an accident. You're not looking at the blinking sign to tell you, what the speed limit is, you don't know what the speed limit is. What I'm suggesting is, if you wanna use the blinking sign to reduce the speed limit, fine, you also need to put the permanent sign to reduce the speed limit. And that's something that's easy, simple, straightforward, it doesn't take more than 48 hours to make that decision. And then they can put them up in another 24 hours, and then let them sit there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, and in 1 month, by the next meeting, we can have that done.
Just
So
to
that's number
clarify,
one.
to change the speed limit isn't that, but we do have to change ordinance and like that's a ride-out street, so like that's actually, like we could put up a sign quickly, but actually changing the speed limit is a more complicated process.
Right, it doesn't take an act of the state legislature to change the speed limit on North Main Street.
It does actually, yeah, it does actually. Yeah, actually does.
The state in Rhode Island set the speed limit for every state road in the state.
There's a data to be found.
Yeah.
Oh, state traffic, not the state legislature.
Yeah, there is like a whole process.
But it's not that big deal, how would the process go?
We need monthly, so the request has to come from, could come from the city, or has to come from.
All right, when's the next meeting?
Meetings.
Next week. So was there any recommendation from this to your meeting next week?
Grant, I appreciate this, and also we are gonna have a whole meeting about all the tools in the toolbox related to how we reduce speeding, which can include reducing the traffic.
All right, this
It's
is
been-
by time return.
Yeah.
This is my neighborhood,
I know.
lifetime.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Tool number one is reduce the speed limit and give that an opportunity to take effect. You heard me say before, I'm not a fan, I'm an environmentalist, I'm a lifetime environmentalist, but environmentalist before everything won. I'm not a fan of speed bumps, speed humps, whatever the hell you want to call it, because everybody's gonna slow down, then everybody's gonna accelerate again. It makes no sense from an environmental perspective, number one. Number two, the gentleman was talking about,
Yeah.
that's not good either. Follow the traffic now, everybody would. And then another recommendation that I made, that other people would reinforce and reiterated. The intersections at North Main Street are very far apart. And why? Because there's no very around, on the west side of North Main Street. So you can put in crosswalks in between.
Yeah.
You don't have to have lights in there. You don't have to put blinks or anything there. Just put crosswalks there. You all know, and it might need to be reinforced, but if somebody is a pedestrian in the crosswalk, they get priority. So that's fine. So put that additional crosswalks in there where they make sense, you don't put them every other.
Yeah.
And that will help. And then finally, the intersection of Only and North Main, is a created intersection. That intersection didn't exist the way it is currently, way back when. But what we did, urban renewal, which one of my folks called urban renewal. Yeah, they were accurate, because that's what happened.
People just got moved from that one neighborhood, yeah.
That whole program was a disaster, in so many ways. That intersection was reconstructed and recreated, and what we see now is what we put in there, which is not pedestrian friendly.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of things to make that more pedestrian friendly. But, that takes infrastructure alteration and change. The first things first. Put in speed limit. And then put in the crosswalk.
Yes, please.
Stuff that has been.
Yeah, definitely talking about it, like.
Yeah, so these are ideas that are from the campus.
And one last thought, we're looking to increase folks, to get out of their car and onto the bus, you know, with the created, this, R line, you see the 98, 99 line, where, North Providence, go up Main Street, use the cutter. And they decided the way they were gonna make it balance was they were gonna eliminate every other bus stop for the R line, which to me was counterintuitive, makes no sense at all whatsoever. So we should, because how much faster does that accelerate the bus trip? Not that much. And so I would suggest to Richard, who unfortunately said well, that they can put back some bus stops for the R line. Probably the worst example is not quite in the stretch of road of North Main that you guys are talking about. But if you're downtown, up on the R line, first stop is the train station, and the next stop is in front of what you all think of as the old state house. And then guess where the next stop is? Guess where the next stop is?
I don't know, it's not my head. Yeah.
University Heights. That's one hell of a distance between bus stops.
Yeah.
There's no justification, no excuse for that. There's a bus stop in between the foot of Smith Street, but it's for the other.
It's for the other, yeah.
Buses, not the R line. You know, the R line needs to be stopping there also, especially if we're trying to encourage folks, work in the state house, just walk down and go down.
Yeah. It's a couple.
But along the way, you know, what's the next bus stop after University Heights? Doyle Ave, that's okay. What's the next one after that? Well, Shamrock, that's a long way. I'm sorry, no, 7th Street,
Yeah.
that's okay. But then from 2nd Street, it's all the way to Old Shamrock Ave, that's a long way. And then from Old Shamrock Ave, it's the 3rd Street. And from the 3rd Street, it's the 9th Street.
Yeah.
I mean, you know. People,
Yeah.
they need, I wonder if some way they need, what their logic is, their eyes. And if that's, well, one beats the other. Precisely.
We have a handout where it's city map for all the stops.
I was about to say, the two can be coordinated, you know, where you have bus stops, you can have crosswalks. And then I said, the last meeting, you know, in a lot of narrow streets, you don't want the bus stop right up close to each other because that will congest. But in Main Street, that's not an issue at all, so the bus stop can be at each other, and you have a crosswalk.
Yeah.
So, solve multiple problems, simple. Roll call. That would help us. So, yeah, great, nice.
Yeah.
Glad you're pushing.
Yeah.
Okay, very short.
Awesome, so we have to have a motion to return. Okay.
Enter the exhibits.
Oh, do we have to enter these?
You want to make a motion to enter them as
Can I
exhibits?
have a motion to enter these as exhibits, all the handouts about today?
I'll make a motion to enter the exhibits for today's meeting.
Do they need them? One and, yeah, 1 and 2.
Exhibits.
There's
one and
3.
two. Sorry.
Yeah, because we have the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So this is 1, this is 2, that's 3.
I'm sorry, I looked down, which is 2? The letter, okay.
I make a motion to include exhibits 1 through 3 into today's record.
Can I have a second, please? All in favor? Aye. Anybody close? Okay, cool. That is great. Thank you everybody so much. I'll follow up. Motion to adjourn. I thought we did that. A second.
Where's the restroom?
Yeah, we gotta give you the key.
Thank you. Right down the hall?
It's right. Take it right.
All right, thank you.
It's great.